Hi, everybody. Welcome to our expert panel today. We're going to explore generative AI and its impact on customer experience. I want to thank our partners from TechForge for helping us put this on. We have a great panel today to talk about the transformational role of data, generative AI in shaping the customer experience landscape. As a lot of you have seen kind of in this space, especially around generative AI, kind of a lot of the hype, a lot of companies embracing this new technology. We're really excited to have this panel together to kind of talk about how that technology is revolutionizing how businesses engage with their customers to create a personalized, interactive, and immersive experience. We'll have about 30 to 35 minutes just for panel discussion, and then we'll move to a Q&A. So down at the bottom here, you'll see there's a Q&A section as part of the platform. Feel free to put any questions, comments, or anything you'd like to share as we go through this, and we'll get to those questions at the end. I want to introduce EXL. We are a data and digital transformation consulting company, focuses across insurance, financial services, health, retail, transportation. The work that we do is usually around data, analytics, digital, and AI. We do a little bit of operations work as well, but kind of our real bread and butter is that data analytics and digital space, and moving even more aggressively into this generative AI and AI machine learning space with a lot of our customers. As we kind of think about like who EXL is, one of the things that we talk a lot about is when you're picking a partner, it's not just about capabilities. We have a strong suite of digital capabilities, analytic capabilities, but when we think about picking a partner, it's about collaboration and it's about character. And I think the panel we put together with some of the clients that we do work with, I think they'll really help kind of resonate some of that messaging, and hopefully I think they're going to provide a lot of great information to everybody here about that. So with that being said, I want to introduce each member of the panel. They'll go through a quick introduction and kind of who they are. So I'll start with Charlotte. Go ahead, Charlotte.
Hi, everyone. My name is Charlotte Zhao. I am now part of the Prudential's CMO office. I'm heading up enterprise marketing, analytics, and research across the enterprise capability, covering Prudential in the US. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Charlotte's got a lot of great topics to talk about today, too, outside of just Gen A, especially around like behavior science. So I'm really excited to hear and learn more about that. Go ahead, Renat.
Hey, everybody. I'm Renat Premnath from TrueStage. So I'm part of what we call it experience capability in TrueStage, that organization. It's pretty much a shared service organization with digital marketing, data, analytics capabilities, just that supports the entire value stream of the insurance business of TrueStage. So I am the director of experience analytics and serve as a chair for the enterprise analytics there.
Great, thanks, Renat. Go ahead, Deepti.
Hi, everyone. This is Deepti. I look after solutions for our insurance analytics practice at EXL. Wishing everyone a very happy Indian Independence Day. I really look forward to today's conversation.
Great. Thanks, Deepti. Go ahead, Shashank.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Shashank Verma. I lead customer experience transformation for EXL across all the different industries that Matt just talked about. I mean, I'm very, very excited to have this conversation with this great panel, with Renat and Charlotte being there. And obviously, Matt is going to help us moderate this. So very excited. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Shashank. And like Shashank said, I'm Matthew Paris. I'm going to be moderating the conversation today. I'm our VP and head of sales engineering here at EXL. Just a final reminder, again, we want this to be kind of collaborative. We're hoping that we get a lot of questions as we move through this. As they pop up, if they're relevant, we'll bring them into the conversation. We'll save the majority of them for the end. We'll have about 5 to 10 minutes for questions. So any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I want to start with Charlotte. So we've seen a lot of growth opportunities within the customer experience space. Can you tell us a little about how your company is embracing those kind of new growth opportunities, especially talking about some of the behavioral science and data work that you're doing? You there, Charlotte? Sorry, we can go to, I don't know if I'm not hearing Charlotte, but we can move on to Rennet. Rennet, we'll start with you. Rennet, what is a big CX challenge you're seeing within your organization?
So, generally speaking about CX challenge, I just go beyond just TrueStage, but
Sure. So
one of
that's a integrated both the segment we're getting to.
Do I just go ahead?
I think Charlotte. Yeah, go ahead, Rennet. Sorry, Charlotte, you're coming in a little lag there.
Okay. So generally, right, one of the biggest issues that we find with CX, which is it's more of an irony, right? Number one, we all know experience, a customer service, customer experience is central to retention in continuous growth and whatnot. And retention plays a very important play in all our businesses. But many times CX programs, when they are put together, one thing that I've seen is it is difficult for us to articulate hard value right away, because some of the initiatives that we initiate from CX may not have an immediate impact to a top line or a bottom line, unless and until we are remediating a big issue, right? If it is a CX strategic focus, it is trying to improve revenue, maybe you're not going to see something in year, but it needs to get tied really close to your profitability and whatnot, right? So one of the things that I've been thinking about, reading about, and seeing if we could put into practice is this theory of customer centricity, right? It is just not a theory. It has been something that Professor Peter Fader from Wharton School he's written a book about that, right? Customer centricity. It just takes on where Tracy and Wiersma left. They talk about 3 dimensions that help in profitable growth for businesses, which is a product innovation, operation excellence, and customer experience. And Peter Fader goes deeper into customer centricity and essentially says, hey, customer experience and centricity does not mean you treat all customers the same. It doesn't mean that we are going to fire customers, right? But it does mean we choose which customers we are going to provide differentiating experience, greater acquisition, retention, and development strategies deployed for a specific segment of customers that gain high profitability for the business, while treating the other segments, in a good way, so that we continue to retain that business. So, that is one paradox and, potentially some solutions that, we are thinking about.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, right? As you think about kind of when you talk about a differentiated experience, there's sort of the external differentiated experience, right? You want to be different than your competitors and you want to understand the market and kind of what resonates with them, right? But then internally, as you kind of think about your segmentations of customers, you want differentiated experiences there, you want them all to be good. You want them all to, every interaction with your company, right, is an opportunity for a customer to have a great experience, right? And you want that. But you kind of need to think about, what does that mean? What does it cost to provide that? You don't want to provide your kind of lowest paying or least valuable customers with a super high level experience that some people are paying a premium for. So I think that's a great kind of insight as you talk about that. It sounds like we have Charlotte back now too. So Charlotte, I'll come back to you. I know you're doing a lot of work in the behavioral science space. What are some of the growth opportunities within the CX space that you and your organization are embracing? And can you share some of the best practices that you guys are implementing with maybe data or behavioral science?
Yeah, sure. So, at the House of the Prudential, there's a lot of CX work. In addition to a lot of B2C, we do a lot of B2B or B2B2C. And as we could imagine, the CX coverage and the practice might be different or has its own limitation depending on what we try to acquire and service a different segment of the customer. And as a result of that, we really trust in big data, but at the same time, overlay that with some behavioral finance is very critical to our success. And the customer dynamic has changed so much. The needs of the financial product covering insurance and retirement also changing drastically. I would say after COVID. So for example, before COVID, we didn't see a peak of needs of retirement product, particularly on younger generation, right? Like if you look into annuity and the product, tends to catering a lot of older segments. But we start to see a lot of query from Google, from social media, hashtag annuity. The volume of that in the past 6 to 9 months is trending up so much. So you start to pick in a lot of nuances from open source intelligence, you test them out through primary research, and from there we start to bring into A/B testing design into the data, to the database marketing, right? So when we start to score the customer, who to target, how to target, what treatment to get, overlay with all this so-called the CX index, we also overlay this whole behavioral finance. And we started doing a lot of different messaging and the targeting, depending on the segment of age, depending on what we are picking up on this narrative from social and from open source intelligence. So a lot of the work we are doing is not a lot of micro segment. People tend to say, oh, personalization. It's not necessarily meaning one-on-one, right? It's the capability we are able to identify the new trend and new insight and bring this to a hypothesis testing through primary research and then baking into the real world, big data, and the scoring and the mechanism. So that's kind of the ecosystem we are going through. And we start to see a lot of early success to be able to really understand what is customer fear, what are they worried about, do they need more hand-holding, or do they backing up confidence? A lot of time, they don't really like a complete 100% digital. So how do you provide different angle throughout the entire finance decision journey is part of behavioral finance to kick in, mirror with the big data analytics. I hope that kind of sheds some light.
No, Charlotte, I think you brought up kind of a great point. I think there's something that Shashank wanted to talk about that I want to kind of toss this over to him on. That you mentioned kind of the landscape of customer touchpoints is changing rapidly. It's growing faster than it's ever grown in the past. And I think that's like a really interesting thought is you look at online, mobile, brick and mortar. We did some work in virtual reality and augmented reality as well, right? Like these are things that didn't really exist 5-8 years ago at any real scale, right? And now there's this whole kind of like different aspect or all these different areas where there can be customer touch points. And Shashank, I want to ask if you maybe elaborate on how EXL's data-led approach kind of facilitates that seamless integration of customer touch points across like all those different channels.
So thanks, Matt. And by the way, I loved how Renee and Charlotte brought about different journeys and the use of data in there. We've done 20 plus implementations of customer experience transformation for different clients across different industries. Matt, one of the biggest misnomer really is people think they bought a piece of expensive technology that's going to come and solve their problem. And that never happens, right? First of all. So, when I think about, or when we at EXL think about customer experience transformation, especially the data-led approach, because we think data is fundamental to providing a great customer experience, I'd like to describe it as a two-layer cake. At the foundation, there is data, and that's where I think Charlotte was going, right? Once you understand your customers, and we've got a CX Insights Hub, that's what we call it, and using that, we're able to understand the customer, right? And that really gives us all the information that we need to hyper-personalize interactions, to hyper-segment and micro-segment interactions, as Charlotte was saying, to be able to understand what information can be or should be sent to the customer at the right time. We are able to make all of that, right? So we are able to do that. The second step really there is when you're able to aggregate information across different customer journeys, right? Across different channels that your customers are using, you look at any typical contact center, almost 40 to 50% volume is what we call failure demand, right? Where something they were trying to do, something didn't happen, and they're trying to just, iron that out. Using data, you are able to understand where friction is in their journeys, understand where the exceptions and fallouts are, and before they're even reaching out to you for help, you should be able to proactively reach out to them and help them and update them what's really going on, right? And just by doing that, you'll be able to contain or almost eliminate almost 50% of those interactions, right? And when you're able to do that, understand the channel preferences. And I think, the Charlotte's point is very spot on. Not everybody wants to go digital, right? Especially when you're looking at the retirement space, right? Looking at the demographic, it's really, really important, right? So it's also using data, you'll be able to understand what your customers' channel preferences are and helping them, offer frictionless journeys across those channels. I think that is really, really important. And once you've got all that data, and understand your customer, then using what we call customer communication interface or the layer, using whether it's chat, voice, WhatsApp, any social media, any channels, or email, you can then automate and provide those frictionless experience to your customers. And it's a journey, Matt. It takes time, right? Obviously, to use data and to be able to offer those frictionless experiences to your customers.
Absolutely right. And I'm actually glad that we went down this path, kind of talking about the importance of data and all of the different journeys, the solutioning, everything that we've kind of talked about, kind of all revolves around that data ecosystem. And we have Deepti here, and she's like one of our resident experts here in using data to make decisions, to be helping companies be more data led. So Deepti, I'm going to come to you for two questions right now. We talk a lot about data. We've talked a lot about data right now. How do you leverage different data sources, and how are you solving for data related challenges?
Yeah, sure. I would say that, we are seeing that organizations are making focused efforts in solving three types of data-related challenges. The first one, really ensuring making the right, appropriate data accessible, integrating internal data, external data that resides in different shapes and formats, structured sources, unstructured sources. And we know that, we're talking about, say, insurance organizations, there are legacy systems, breaking the silos that exists within the organizations to create a comprehensive 360-degree view of the customer. So the entire data management piece. So that's the first challenge that we are seeing organizations making a lot of efforts in solving that puzzle. The second challenge is to be able to use that data to generate personalized insights that have ability to enhance customer experience. To Charlotte and Shashank's point, right? It is not easy to create what matters to me versus a Matt. So really looking at a lot of first-party data sources like survey, what kind of engagement behavior they have, are they opening, clicking, subscribing, unsubscribing emails, determining their behavioral lifestyle attributes from, say, external data sources, even looking at life events, clubbing all of this information together to generate personalized insights and identifying what is the right product for the customer, what is the right time to engage with the customer, what are the optimal number of touch points at which we should be engaging with them. So that's the second problem that we are solving for clients. The third, I would say least but most important, is to turn these insights into financial outcomes, to Renet's point, linking CX with financial data. And it has its own challenges because the granularity in which data is captured, say, in finance organizations is very different. It is more aggregated at a policy contract level, whereas customer data is more at transactional level. And it requires a lot of data integration, solving for data integration challenges. Hope that helps.
No, it's a great response, right? And as we've talked about, we've been kind of dancing around journeys. We've talked about data. We've talked about insights. We've talked about analytics, behavioral science. We've talked about a lot of things, right? And I think these all kind of are circling around. We're 20 minutes in. We haven't used the two magic words yet, so I'm going to bring it up now. Generative AI, right? A lot of hype, a lot of talk. Deepti, I'm going to come back to you for this one. What role do you think generative AI plays in producing these insights?
Yeah. Okay, sure. So before I respond to this question, I want to tell you two things about me. I'm an optimist. And I'm also very passionate about the power of data and technology. Now you can predict what my response is going to be. So generative AI, in my view, has potential to reframe the game. It definitely, will play a critical role in the entire life cycle of information synthesis and insights generation. So if we talk about just insights, it definitely, I see that, it will augment scale, speed, and power to generating these insights on time. That's one. Second, I also strongly believe that it enhances our ability to have an empathetic understanding of the customer, understanding their intrinsic motivations, and generating personalized insights with highest accuracy by extracting, say, emotions, sentiments from the text and be able to respond in a human way. Now, of course, we have to do this or execute this in a very responsible way without compromising boundaries, without, say, making even customers uncomfortable in the process. But I definitely see that generative AI has a lot of potential and can definitely reframe the game.
Absolutely. Brennan, let me jump to you here as we talk about this. How are you embracing this generative AI phenomenon while ensuring data privacy and compliance?
That's a very good question. One thing I would say, a preface to what I'm about to say is, we tend to see financials. Usually the way we see financial is, top down. We have our P&Ls, our income statement and whatnot. We look at it, our top line, our bottom line and whatnot. But there is opportunity for us to just shift or invert the paradigm and see it more from, hey, at the end of the day, all this revenue is coming from my customers, right? So how do I see that from a bottoms-up lens? People call that customer lifetime value, or they have different forms in which they look at that. Essentially, generative AI, to Deepti's point, right, is coming to interact in personalization, in experience, optimizing it at that customer level. So it is, if we are able to frame our thinking in that inverted form of customer lifetime value, right? We should be able to leverage some of what is coming up with generative AI. Now, I am a more practical person, right? So there are definitely, at TrueStage, we are very conservative in a way that we are approaching this, right? Because we need to be responsible with what AI can do. So privacies, policies are being put in place first. It is like guardrails that you're creating even before you start piloting or doing anything with all these different things that Gen AI can bring. But I'm pretty sure people outside of enterprises, because I myself, I play with ChatGPT, Midjourney, Bard, all these different things, right? To really understand the capability of what Gen AI is bringing to the table. Essentially, it could revolutionize the way we achieve scale, personalization, and optimization in a whole different way.
Yeah, it's a really interesting space, right? I think one of the things, at least in my experience so far, is, you mentioned the guardrails, the security, the privacy. It's such an interesting concept to me that's like where we've started from on this kind of, let's call this a revolution. That's always been the let's just say like the downstream impacts as things happen, where we've always been really reactive to like new technologies. When automation kind of first showed up with RPAs, digital transformation started in the early 2000s. We waited until everything was a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more developed, and then we kind of applied that. Here, we're kind of starting with that first, which is a really kind of like interesting kind of shift. Kind of, I think, speaks to maybe like the macrocosm of like how we kind of embrace or experience technology now, maybe than maybe we would have, 5, 10, 15 years ago. So in that generative AI space, Shashank, I'm going to come to you for kind of the generative AI here. Then Charlotte, I'll come back. Maybe we can talk a little bit more just about CX. But what we hear a lot when we're talking to clients is that generative AI, it's great. Everybody plays around with Chat GPT, but I think a lot of clients are asking us, like, make it real for us. Show us the impact it's going to have or can have in our business. How do we apply this? How is it not just a parlor trick, right? How do we kind of get value out of it? So what are kind of some of the key advantages that companies can get for using or leveraging generative AI over traditional methods in crafting a customer experience strategy?
Sure, thanks, Matt. And just because how Deepti and Renan started this, right? So I'm going to say I'm a practically optimistic person. Okay, so. And what I mean by that, so Matt, we are talking, and in fact, we are, consulting many organizations, in this generative AI space. And I'm going to refrain from a much wider perspective, and I'll talk just about customer experience and the possibilities over there, right? Mm-hmm. Almost every organization that we're talking to is doing something or wanting to do something, right? So either they've already started this journey, or they are really thinking hard about starting this journey. And almost everybody that we've been talking to is thinking about starting, just because of the guardrails and being comfortable with this technology, that aspect that Rene talked about, is they're all starting with what we are calling internal interactions, right? And not directly exposing Gen AI straight to the customers. That is the part of evolution, right? Start with your internal processes, make it internal employee facing and agent facing. And as that matures and you've got all the guardrails in place, you feel comfortable with the technology, you expose it to the customers. There are three big aspects or opportunities that we are seeing with generative AI in the customer experience space. One, which is a no-brainer, really, is the use of synthetic data, right? Even before generative AI came in, almost everybody is experimenting or doing something with technologies like conversational AI, or real-time agent assist solutions, and so on and so forth, right? And now we've got Gen AI that can give you all that synthetic data that you need to train your engine, to train them on different intents, on different utterances, and building all of that, right? And rather than, so your speed to value with the use of synthetic data and training your solutions on synthetic data using Gen AI becomes very, very significant, right? So the time to value really gets shortened. So that's number one. Number two is where, what we call agent-facing stuff, right? So how you're able to combine or integrate all those different channels and those different journeys, right? You sit next to a contact center agent, you see they have, what they go through is phenomenal, right? They've got hundreds of PDFs, knowledge articles, documents, portals that they need to refer to many a times to respond to customer inquiries. And what we're able to do very, very quickly, not a matter of months, in a matter of days and weeks, is able to feed these LLMs, with all of those hundreds and thousands of pages, PDFs and Word documents and portals for the agent, so that on a real-time basis, they get all those insights and those real-time nudges and next best actions proactively while they're talking to the customers. So all of that time and effort, and most importantly, focus, right? They only need to focus on providing a great experience to the customers. All of that intelligence, generative AI using LLMs, using enterprise data, we're able to bring to those agents on a real-time basis. It's phenomenal. We're working with I'll give an example. We're working with a healthcare client. They came to us and said, help us sell 20% more Medicare sales policies, right? And what we are really doing over there is, imagine that Charlotte and Renan are my best sales reps, and they're able to do much more conversion. And Matt, you're a mediocre sales rep, let's say, right? What we're able to do is, using all the voice transcripts of Charlotte and Renan, we are able to learn how they are able to navigate some of those conversations, with those customers, giving you those insights on a real-time basis, Matt, helping you come up that learning curve, and how Renan and Charlotte have been successful in selling, helping you actually bridge that gap and to be able to help you sell more. right? And it's phenomenal. I mean, we've just started. We're seeing really good results. And of course, I'm sure as we mature, so it's building those kinds of interactions, I think is phenomenal, right? And there's a huge opportunity in there. It's going to revolutionize how we do this. And the third is when customers go to your portals or anywhere, they're looking for a lot of information. Nobody wants to go through those FAQs, which are long paragraphs and all of that, right? What we've been able to do is using Gen AI and LLMs, right? Bringing that in a very, very intuitive manner to the customers to be able to tell them what they need to do in a very, very pointed manner, right? Irrespective of how they frame the question, right? Any utterance that they use, bringing all those variations and helping them on a real-time basis is a game changer as well. So I am very, very optimistic about this. We've already done, in fact, we're doing a number of implementations which are already showing great results. And this will only mature. This is only step one in the journey. It's going to mature over a period of time. So I'm very excited about this.
Absolutely. It's a really cool space to be part of. There's two questions in here. I was looking through kind of the Q&A, and I just wanted to call. We have Nico and we have Mohana Kumar. They've asked two pretty interesting questions, and I wanted to just kind of maybe address them real quick. And again, there's the chat down, or the Q&A at the bottom. Feel free to put in questions. We'll try to get to some of them at the end here. And you use the word revolutionary, Shashank, and that's actually what Mohana Kumar's question is, can we consider this a revolution? And this Gen AI space, and I'll just my perspective on I don't know if we can call it a revolution yet, right? I think it's been really cool. It's been really excited. Renat's mentioned playing with ChatGPT. I think we've all done that, right? I think we've all used it to maybe kind of help kind of smooth out some things. One of the things I like to use for, hey, proofread this for me. That's fantastic, right? To just be able to like have somebody proofread something for me and spit it back in, a little bit clearer, or get rid of some of the mistakes that I've made. So I don't know if we're quite at revolution yet, but I think we're going down that path. I think there's like that infrastructure's in place. If you think about like a light bulb, right? We have the light bulb. Now we need the kind of infrastructure and the electricity to kind of drive that. But I think, we're heading down that path. And then Nico's statement was, that basically, again, I think what everybody's kind of touched on here as we've talked about Gen AI is that, it does some of the heavy lifting for us. And Nico mentions that kind of smaller businesses, startups can start kind of, it gives them a little bit of a leg up, it creates leverage for them when, instead of having to have somebody write copy, go find marketing, go find out, if you're a small organization, how do you kind of compete with the big firms? I think it's a really interesting space there as well. So I wanted to jump over to Charlotte. I know Charlotte, we've talked a little bit about kind of Gen AI, but Gen AI is just one piece of that kind of CX space, right? It's one of the enablers. It's one of the pieces of it. It's going to drive, without great customer experience. Again, Gen AI is just, it's just there, right? It needs to impact customers in a positive way. So, there's been a long-standing conversation around measuring value of CX, right? How do we kind of quantify what it is what we're doing? Can you shed some light on how CX initiatives are being measured and established, especially for complex financial products?
Yeah, sure. And I think that was a great question that was starting, like all the company, especially large one, everyone does have a CX metric, right? Almost everyone has a CX metric, but only a handful were able to bring this CX tied back to the financial outcome or sort of ROI type of metric. So we attempted, we're looking into, like I think Dipti mentioned earlier, it's really hard to marry the lifetime value, like a financial metric, with the transaction type of customer data. So there's a lot of creativity going to that, right? Like in terms of from data, from math, from statistics. So that's one lens of very quantitative side. But let's not forget, when we want to drive everything to ROI, it's an inferencing, it's an organization maneuvering and inferencing. Hence, to be able to have a right partnership, to be agreed. We measure it as a complex financial product is a short-term value, is a long-term value. How do you look at lifetime value? How do you look in the withdrawal? How do you look in dropout? How do you bake in all this assumption into different curve or different segment? And that is where our actuarial partner and the finance partner come into the play. And to agree certain the metric and using a more creative cluster way to marry into the customer. So the way we approach it, probably a lot of organizations have a promoter, detractor, passive, right? But what we were doing successfully, we were able to attach a value to a B2B customer, to B2C, and the B2C customer across all different kind of business line and the different customer unit. And from there, then you could apply this to the servicing, to marketing, to sales, to inject a different treatment into the sales and the marketing campaign, and start to measure effectiveness by applying CX ROI metric into your campaign outcome. So this is the whole cycle. We started about 24 months ago. And again, we got some industry recognition of our approach. So I'm happy to dive into that in another conversation, but that's kind of a nutshell. Mm-hmm. How do we start? And if I will recap, it is starting from a very basic historical data, but tied with some sort of statistic calculation, but finance partnership and actuarial partnership. It is very critical to bring the light that the entire organization will be willing to take such metric, become an investment decisioning metric going forward across the board.
No, I think those are all great points, right? As you think about kind of the KPIs or metrics that we want to be thinking about, how do those really impact the customer experience initiatives we have going on? And I think that's a good segue for Rennet. In today's rapid evolving business landscape, data and analytics have emerged as powerful tools in shaping a customer's experience. Can you tell us a little about how your CX initiatives have translated into measurable business value?
No, absolutely. So to Charlotte's point, right? We make inferences to our financial outcomes. So some of the ways we do that is we've defined certain metrics like, hey, retention per se, right? How am I going to improve retention by X percent? Because if I moved retention by X percent, it is going to influence my profitability and potential lifetime value of a client, right? So the way we begin to even approve our projects in our company right now is without a business case, you don't get funding. And the business case goes down to say, this is the financial outcome you're driving. And this is how I'm looking to drive that financial outcome that goes through governance cycles of how you achieve that, right? So it is I would say it has transformed over time significantly of how close we measure our financial outcomes and, how wise are we with the dollars we spend, right? So that we are ensuring we are funding projects that really move the needle and not wishful thinking. So, which is where I initially said I'm a practical person, right? We know outcomes can happen. This can happen, that can happen. But give me a use case, put it on paper first, explain thoughtfully how you're going to approach this. Of course, there are going to be some learnings you're going to get out of that. But if something is not working, we should know how to cut the losses soon and not live into it just because it is somebody's special dream to make something to come true, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And I think you talked a lot about metrics. You talked about having that CBA, right? And I think that's a big, important piece of these initiatives, right? What is it that we are going to get at the end of this? What is that tangible value we're going to see if we go down this path? It can't just be, more tweets, more likes, more vanity metrics, right? We need to show some sort of dollar impact. And I want to come to you, DP, to kind of piggyback on top of that. What kind of data do you feel has been most valuable to impact CX as we kind of think about that from, say a financial perspective or kind of, just improving CX in general? What data do you think is providing the most value?
Yeah. I would say that, Matt, it's a combination of first-party and third-party data. that is very critical in enhancing CX. But when we are generating insights, it is very important to put these insights into, say, a two-dimensional grid, whereas one dimension representing customers' intrinsic motivations that are driving their behavior and needs, and second dimension representing financial outcomes that organizations are looking for, to Renet's and Charlotte's point, whether it is value of new business or is it profitability within the existing book of business that organizations are looking for. When you map that with customers' intrinsic motivations, then it definitely enables organizations to have better decision making and also ensure that they're meeting both customer needs as well as business outcomes at the same time. Intrinsic motivations are definitely not easy to compute. If I think as being a consumer of, say, complex financial products such as insurance, there are four or five broad categories of segments. So say, for example, a customer may have a very intrinsic motivation of having financial security or income protection being today as well as tomorrow. There's another segment of customer who might be more interested in, say, lifestyle or ensuring that they're able to adopt healthier lifestyle. Like myself, I would love to buy any policy that will enforce me to walk 10,000 steps a day. Whereas if I compare it with my husband, he's looking for something which gives his family more financial security today as well as in the future. So their intrinsic motivations of the customers differ. And then there's third category, and Shashank would agree to that, which is like customer service matters to them most. They want Amazon of customer service no matter which product they buy. So it is very important for us to understand what are their intrinsic motivations, and that you can understand only by looking at both first and third party data, like really looking into their life events. Are there any life events like, say, parenthood, marriage, that trigger the need for increased financial security for these customers? Similarly, are there prospects who are looking for surge in demand for healthcare products, or are they responding to health content more and look alike our existing customers? So there are a lot of data points that can be tapped into to generate these insights, which have financial outcomes for the organizations too. I hope that helps.
No, I think that's a great synopsis of kind of the value that companies can see from data. So we have about 3 minutes left. We have a couple. So that last question was from Emily, I believe, from the questions. I have one from Amit here that I want to ask. I'm going to just lay it out there. If anybody in the panel wants to answer, and if nobody does, I'll just call on somebody and put them on the spot. But he asked, looking ahead, what collaborative efforts or partnerships do you foresee between businesses and technology providers to maximize the potential of LLMs and generative AI for customer engagement and enhance the overall experience? And I'll give you guys a second to think by just saying, I think this is a really interesting question, just because the LLMs and the generative AI and the platform and the tech side of it are one piece. And then there's kind of like the business side and how do we get value out of this and all the things that Renan and Charlotte and DP and Shashank have talked about, right? How do we kind of apply these kind of revolutionary, I'll use the word, technology to a business outcome to drive customer engagement and enhance the overall experience? So I'll pause there. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts that they would like to provide to that.
So, Matt, I can take a stab at this.
I was going to call on you anyway, Shashank, so go ahead.
So, I think it's a great question. The way to make these successful, right? I think this is going to be, when we think about generative AI and LLMs, and how organizations are experimenting and, doing POCs in them, it's important to have a pod, right? That pod construct needs to have some business SMEs, right? Which are able to bring about the use cases or actually the real business challenges that they are out there to solve with technology, and how we're going to make that happen. To Renet's point, it's going to have the compliance team and InfoSec teams engaged as well, because we definitely do want to have our guardrails in place. And obviously a finance, perspective as well. I mean, because, again, going back to Charlotte and Renet's point, right? I mean, it's got to be measurable and it's got to deliver a business impact, right, in terms of financials. So, that's how we see this happening. whichever organizations are actually taking, strides in doing this, they're building this pod construct together, and that is how they're able to make this successful.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. So it's 10:45. We're at time. I want to give, I think, Charlotte the last maybe closing argument, and we may go over a minute or two here. It's okay. We'll send Jen in marketing the bill. But I'll go to Charlotte. I have a quick question for you to kind of close this out, then we can kind of wrap up. If you could coach an organization, what would be the one thing that you'd want them to adopt to improve CX kind of in the current landscape we're in now?
Yeah, I would say the agility of the technology. We have a huge, great vendor ecosystem, but unfortunately, you have a lot of goodwill to be able to inject this great technology into any application we want to adopt. And so I think agility on both the vendor technology and the user case, it is something I would like to see. How can we very quickly break down things we want to implement into a very small POC, and agility of being creative about not always getting the perfect data, not always getting into PII, will be a very critical way. We're talking about a lot of customer motivation, but don't forget, this is a society, a lot of people have a herding effect. No matter you have 15 million investable asset or $5,000 investable asset, you always look around what's going on when you decide a complex financial transaction product, which is where we are specialized. So I kind of just want to leave that a thought of how society transformation, personalization continue to be important, but to be able to break down a lot of great ideas into small POC will be most critical to success in large organization implementation. Thank you.
Yep. No, innovation and agility, I feel like those are the two key points there. And I think those are great ways and kind of great thoughts to kind of wrap this up. So like I said, we're at time. We're 2 minutes over. I want to thank Charlotte. I want to thank Renat, Deepti, Shashank for taking time out of their day to come and discuss generative AI, CX, behavioral science, kind of the whole gamut of customer experience and the evolving landscape there. So, and everybody in the audience, thank you. I know, it's 10:45 here Eastern, so I know this is kind of prime time day for, a Tuesday for everybody to take some time out and kind of learn about CX and generative AI. So thank you everybody for joining and giving us some really good questions. I think we'll sign off from here. Thanks everybody.